Hi, and welcome to Data Minders Business Research. I am your corporate strategic analyst, 𝘓𝘂𝘆𝘀 Simon, and happy Valentine's Day. This audio will be posted on Valentine's Day. And in the theme of love, I want to look at some love data with respect to Trinidad and Tobago, the island that I am currently living in. And it's interesting. Before I start, I want to put some basic assumptions, some limitations. First of all, this is really a call for someone to do further research. A colleague of mine shared this data with me, and I said, we should look at it just a little bit. This took me an hour. I honestly believe that this should be someone's study because there are impacts to it. And I'm going to tell you what it is in a moment. The other thing is, because I only had limited time, I couldn't dive in, make diagrams perfect. I just want to show you the basic findings of what I found so that you can make a decision for yourself as to whether or not this is an actual issue in Trinidad and Tobago or not. So let's get straight into it. What I'm going to start with is the reasoning for my topic. What I'm looking at today is marriage and divorce rates in Trinidad and Tobago. And by looking at marriage and divorce rates in Trinidad and Tobago, one might say that isn't really an issue. We will be looking at newspaper articles in a moment where we will see that the few persons who really have a concern are religious organizations. But I want to link marriage to the economy and how it can impact the economy. Some persons might think, once you're working, that's good. But that's not necessarily true. Now, in this paper, and I'm going to get started. So in this paper, which is done by Baranowski and Soldainga, hopefully my Polish friends would correct me in the chat below. This paper is recent, which is good, 2019, because I did find a lot of papers weren't recent. This paper looks at marriage and divorce and economic growth. And what it basically says is that when persons divorce, there is a loss of family social capital. Now, some of us may know about human capital, but there is a different type of capital that affects the economy. And the authors hypothesize that the dissolution of a marriage leads to the ability of an employee to socialize. Basically, they list it as they lose their capacity to cooperate, to collaborate, to share responsibility, not only, and this is the line here, not only within the family, but also the professional level. And so this leads to, because if this happens, if these three things happen, it will affect productivity and output and lead to a slowdown in economic growth. And what they found is, and I'll read it, these phenomena directly affect the working members of the family in which divorce takes place. According to the main hypothesis, their impact is transferred to professional life and concerns employee teams. Now, we're going to put a pin in that, and then we're going on to the next article. Then we're looking at the data. Now, I can't go through all the theories that have linked marriage to the economy, right? Because time, but this paper is a very good paper that looks at different perspectives. And The name of the paper is On the Economics of Marriage. I bet you all didn't know it had that. There's an economics for most everything. Just saying. A Theory of Marriage, Labor, and Divorce. And they have a variety of perspectives in their table of contents. If you want this article, you can look it up, or you can email me at dm.businesstt@gmail.com, or you can request it in my direct messaging, no matter the social media platform. So they have the economics of marriage, the economics of marriage and belief systems. They look at labor. They look at the effect on women's labor. But I want to go straight to productivity and earnings. And that's page 267. And I shouldn't be too quiet here, but I'm giving you, I wonder if you could hear the bird outside. Just perfect for a Valentine's Day message that is hopefully not detrimental. All right, so when we talk about productivity, now this particular paper is a little bit outdated. This is 2015, which is why it's even more crucial, because so many things have happened between 2015 and today, between COVID, the changes in leadership in different countries, the different wars. There is a lack of understanding of marriage and productivity, but I'm keeping it to the Caribbean as much as possible, and specifically Trinidad and Tobago. Now, these theories that are presented in part 6 aren't necessarily new. These are things that we've probably heard a number of times. That when persons are married, the woman's labor, the female's labor, and we are assuming male-female relationships, but if there are other types of relationships that persons would like to consider, whoever adopts the household responsibility, the majority of the household responsibility, as I said, this paper is outdated, so they may not have considered this too much. They would be sacrificing their own income to promote the income of the other working person. And the other working person, because they are held solid at home, they are allowed to be as productive as possible, right? And so it is a trade-off basically in marriage. And we already all know this. The question that I have is, if it's a trade-off, what can be done for those who are married and are experiencing the trade-off to help them with that trade-off, right? Because you want women to be as productive as possible in the workplace. And if they are as productive as possible in the workplace, who is being sacrificed? The children. And if the children are the future, and any economic growth model could tell you, human capital, present, past, and future, is very important. Not only in the number of children being made, but the quality of citizens within our country. And so that trade-off, we don't know right now if that is happening in Trinidad and Tobago, hence my call. And we'll see why the call is needed because of the data. So let me just get this next article. Marital earnings. Now this one is about Trinidad and Tobago. Request the full text. We don't have time to. So this text looks at, and this is on Trinidad and Tobago by Reed Olson, and a little bit, and we talk about the datiness of, if you'd like to know more, DM me as usual, because it does affect consistency, and it also goes into why this should be studied in economic growth. Now this article looks at 1993 data, which is even worse, with 7,063 workmen and women from Trinidad and Tobago earning premiums. Now, what is marital earning premiums? How much more money you earn as compared to a single person just from being married. I keep saying mad. I'm sorry. Happy Valentine's Day. So this result is strengthened when controlling for socioeconomic status, which found to increase the size of marital premiums for all workers, regardless of gender and ethnicity. So basically, where you start is how larger your premiums will be. But the main finding is that there is a marriage premium in Trinidad and Tobago, at least for 1993 data. Is there a marriage premium? Now, we don't know, because the data in Trinidad and Tobago is quite outdated. Scope, Ministry of Digital Transformation, data.gov.tt, CSO's website, and we'll look at CSO's websites in a moment. The last figure, and so we'll talk about that we actually had were 2019. We're in 2025. That's about 65 years, give or take, when it was collected, and it's provisional, and that's a concern as well. So, given the lack of the quantitative data, where do we go to understand our current climate when it comes to love? Now, while persons do not like newspapers because it's unreliable, I call newspapers, especially in research or data miners business research, I call newspapers a form of direction. It leads you to where you don't need to necessarily quote newspapers, but you should not ignore as to who to speak to, perceptions or ideas that you may. So in this paper in 2018, that's a bit outdated, but still, I do and don't. I won't, by the Daily Express, by Michael Mondesi, leaders at that point in time, again, that had a concern about, right? And as I have shown, marriages do affect and can affect future in one way or the other. And then we just give it 2 minutes to load. Okay. Let me just close this one off and it might help that. And so I'm going to pause the record. Anyway, so while that is loading, we will talk about, I will be showing you some of the data. Load it. Okay, just now. Okay. Apparently, Americans, but some that marriage isn't good for, produced by 𝘧𝘃𝗃𝗃𝗃 with a grain of salt, notes that some economists coming up here expected the benefit that it could prove. And then we also have another article by Trinidad and Tobago Express, which shows that a 2023 article, 1 in 3 marriages end in Trinidad and Tobago. So yes. So imagine 3 married in a room with 6 people. There is a chance at 33% divorced. Look, it's up, reminders. And there has been since opening of the family court in Princestown. So much, yes, so much one can. So let us come out of this and let us look now. The system will not overload. I'm going to stop sharing. So stop sharing. So as I was saying, let's share now the actual, we're going to start with the divorce rates and marriage rates in Trinidad and Tobago. All right. So this data is taken from, okay, let's try again. Your screen is sharing. I hope you guys are seeing. Yes, it's sharing. Okay, so this data is taken because, as I was saying before, and I'm using the number of divorces as a perfect example, since 2010, a number of the figures have been provisional. I just left number of divorces to show that example. And this is number of divorces here. And let's just look at the figures. Now we could see the figures within a range of minimum about 5.7 in 2014 to a maximum of 2009 in 6.6. Now it would be perfect if we could figure out what was happening around those times to maintain those marriage rates of per 1,000 of the population. Now, the number of marriages, which is just the figure version of the marriage rates, also shows basically the same thing. But the number of divorces has been fluctuating. Now, there isn't anything solid that can be said because, as I said, the data is outdated. And that's why we use quality at least to have that direction. And so, for example, this you have no choice but to use it. So what do? You, or any other article, you go into the qualitative realm. Talk to persons, talk to experts, talk to persons who have been divorced and married. You might even have to go to the FAST and request that data and calculate it yourself, depending on what is available, to be able to determine what the marriage rate per thousand population is in Trinidad and Tobago, the number of marriages, and the number of divorces. But let's just go with what we have here. And we could see trend-wise, if we put a trend line on all of these things, we could see that the marriage rates, in fact, let's do that quickly. Let me see, add a trend line. Yeah, bam, and add a trend line. So we're just assuming a linear trend line for the while. The relationship could be different. It could be something like called polynomial. It looks a little bit polynomial. It's logarithmic, exponential, that really digs deep into what the trend really is, right? As I said, 1 hour, and well, now an hour and a half of doing this. This is what we have, right? And so we have on the x-axis, which is the bottom axis, the years, and the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, sorry, or the axis going up for each diagram, marriage and number of marriages, marriage rates and number of marriages. We have, so we see a downward trend in marriages. So the question is, and this is even before now, in these volatile and vulnerable times, what has been the reduced marriage rate that the Trinidad and Tobago expressed in 2023, given that 1 in 3 persons are getting divorced, right? And we could see here that the number of divorces themselves, even though there was a drop from 2005 to 2006, let's just add a trend line very quickly. Assuming again a linear trend line, the number of divorces has dropped, but the question is, and this is the more technical aspect of what researchers, are these changes significant? And we won't be talking about that here. It requires a lot of different types of testing. And in fact, I would not even be using this data exclusively. So in determining, in terms of this timeline, I would want more updated data, and I would need to have a research question to answer. But one can use simple regression in Excel to run a linear model and determine if that simple linear model in itself, in terms of determining that trend line, is significant through another app, AI. Or through AI or another app. The best thing to do would be AI. There are AI resources that do simple statistical analysis on data that or on output or data that you have that Excel cannot do. And Excel also has extensions that can analyze the significance of these trend lines. And if you'd like to know more about that, as I keep saying, because I keep presenting things that that persons might be like, really, that exists? I want to know more. Of course, message me. But these are the types of things that you need to be doing in your research for your business, depending on what the scenario is, right? And so so I'm going to stop sharing. So there is a concern with respect to marriage in Trinidad and Tobago, especially added or by including the Trinidad Express articles that recently said that marriage rates are 1 in, divorce rates are 1 in 3, or marriage rates are 2 in 3. So let me stop sharing this one. And now we're going into another dynamic that I hope does not confuse you. I honestly wish that I had the time to analyze this. I would definitely be using AI to do a moving diagram or a shifting diagram. Let me see, stop share. I will definitely be using AI to do a live diagram, like what you see in, right, this is it here, like what you sometimes see on the World Bank website, where you shift, or one of those more advanced databases where it's alive and it shows you the change in population over time naturally in a video. That would be perfect for us to understand what is going on here. What is this? This is marriages by age groups. Now, concerning by itself, and I'm just going to compare 2015 to the last year, which is provisional, to the last year, which is 28. Some concerns that I would have had, but you can't tell grown persons, according to my mother, you cannot tell grown persons what to do. There is underage marriage, right? That is a concern, and that has been studied about, and if I were to judge from my initial search, that is what has been coming up in the journals, in my search for journals on this, just to find one or two articles, the most, basically, right? And so we're going to leave that there. But what is noticeable is so we're just looking at the figures, not the diagram as yet. The 15 to 19-year-olds are marrying persons 3 to 4 times their age. And that, again, we're dealing with the data, but we have to ask ourselves, what are the consequences, the economic consequences of that? I'm not talking about social consequence. I'm not talking about moral consequence or moral right. I'm talking about the economic consequence. Now, the data on the left-hand side, the age group of the brides. I had to take it out to be able to make the to make diagrams. And the age groups on the top are the age groups of the bridegroom. So they're matching bride to bridegroom by age groups, right? So let me just give you an example. 15 to 19-year-old brides married 35 to 39-year-old bridegrooms. Okay, so what does that mean? When we in terms of policy, when we talk about policy, we're talking about mortality rates, right? Who, if something happens to this older male as they get older and they make children, what is the economic impact on that? Of course, when someone retires or they pass away, there is an economic impact that affects the economy, but that's in the now. I'm talking about in the future with respect to the woman's capacity to raise quality citizens that could contribute to Trinidad and Tobago, the woman's capacity to earn income. So all of these things we have to question and to me, do mitigating policies to help persons like this. Now, we could say, no, well, government can't look at everything, but specificity brings simplicity. When you generalize a situation, you miss certain gaps, and that's how just like if you have and this is the most cliche example, if you have a spoiled apple in a bag of apples, eventually the mold in that spoiled apple gonna affect the apple next to it. Just saying, right? But let's look at the diagram, and I pray that you guys understand what's going on here. So what's at the bottom? It's the age groups all matched up. So this is under 15 to under 15. And the colors match the specific age groups as well, right? So let's say this gray here, this gray line, 20 to 24-year-olds. As we move along the gray line, we're looking at 20 to 24-year-olds, either male or female, matching with 20 to 24-year-olds, either male or female, or other groups. So we could say, this is the 20 to 24-year-old line. We could see that it's not clear, and that's why I said I would definitely break down 2 separate diagrams for each column do merging of diagrams, consider age groups separately based on the bride, the groom, and focus on that. But this is what we have with the time that I have. But what we could see is that, so under 15, one party, there is 0 of the 20 to 24 of the other party. And then when you reach, so every joint in the lines shows a relationship, right? So, and if you click on it, you can see it too. So this is age group, bridegroom 20 to 24, as I said. So what's on the bottom is the bridegroom, and point 20 to 24, which is female, gave 375 marriages. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up in the details, even though I'm talking about the details right now. What I want to talk about is this flattening of this whole system across time. Well, at least from 2015 to 2019, as I said, I would have figured out how to do a really good dynamic AI live chart, changing over time. But let's just do a shift. So this is what we have so far, right? You could even see some of these time periods, some of these lines stop because we don't have any 15 to 90-year-olds marrying 60 to 64-year-old males or 55 to 59-year-old males. But looking at the general thing, moving away, one can see that there is a suppression of marriage in general, at least for those that are most notable, specifically the 25 to 29-year-old males. Before it was 1,000, the highest was 1,000, the whole line was up, but it suppressed within 3 years or 4 years, 15, 16, 17, 18, within 4 years, to about, with the peak being about 748. So that's a drop of 250 right there, marriages in 4 years. And what we could also see is an extension of the line for some age groups where they are still getting married, 65 years and over, for example, at a heightened rate, when some would suspect the pairings still are increasingly getting married when some would expect they wouldn't. Now that has an effect on the economy, and especially when it comes to the pension situation that we're having right now, where the government is taking more stringent measures that should be included. Now I'm going to stop here because I mean, the point of this video, let me go to the point of this video, is to show that love is lovely, yes, but the numbers are showing a different story, and we really need to consider the numbers. Go beyond the sales, and which would be lovely to study what Valentine's sales are like. Most likely that will be qualitative. Go beyond the sales, go beyond and consider that, and go beyond the religious aspect, because it, as the religious persons would, of course, because family is one of the solid foundations of the church, of the temple, of the mosque, of whatever else there is, that in terms of religion, but government needs to think about it as well. Happy Valentine's Day from Data Minders Business Research, answering the hard questions of businesses through research. And as well, this is Tishana Simon from Data Minders, your corporate strategic analyst, improving your company's productivity and profitability in at least 30 days with impactful insights. I want you to know that even though we've mostly spoken about the economy, there is a reason why large organizations that represent business in Trinidad and Tobago always comment on the economy, because the economy affects your business. Happy Valentine's Day.